Welcome to a night of ghostly tales, where the world feels a little colder and shadows seem to move just beyond your sight. Tonight, we'll explore haunted places and the restless spirits that linger there. Do these echoes belong to the past, or is something still watching us right now? Share your thoughts, and together, let's step into the whispers of the unknown. There is a peculiar silence that surrounds abandoned churches, a stillness so complete it seems to hold its breath, waiting for the right moment to release a sound that should not exist. In villages long forgotten by time, where the streets are cracked and overgrown, stories circulate about bells that toll in the dead of night, long after the clergy have departed and the last service ended decades ago. The villagers speak in hushed tones, not daring to speak too loudly, as if saying the stories aloud could make the sound appear again. One such place is a cathedral perched on a lonely hill, its spires reaching like skeletal fingers into the misty night. Locals tell of a bell that rings at midnight on the anniversary of a fire that consumed half the town. No one has been near the cathedral for years. The doors are locked, the bell tower crumbling with age. And yet, on that night, the sound of its ringing travels across the valley, echoing against the hills like a call from another world. Those who have heard it describe a deep vibration that seeps into the chest, a tone that seems almost sentient, mourning, warning, or calling. Some say it is the voice of the priest who once tended the church. Others whisper of a trapped soul, doomed to ring the bell forever. In another village, a small chapel hidden among dense woods is said to play hymns when the moon is full. A passing traveler once claimed to hear the soft notes of an organ drifting through the trees. They approached, hoping to find a candle flickering in the window, someone, anything to explain the music. But the chapel lay empty, windows broken, and doors hanging on their hinges. The music continued for a brief moment before fading, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the sudden awareness that the forest itself seemed to listen. For the traveler, the memory of those notes lingered for years, haunting dreams with the faintest echo of a melody that was never there. Historians and researchers offer explanations that sound logical, but seldom satisfy the imagination. Wind passing through broken bell towers can create haunting tones. The architecture of old stone buildings can carry sound in ways that make distant noises appear unnaturally close. In some cases, locals have admitted to ringing bells themselves for tradition or mischief. Yet these accounts never align with the reports. People still hear bells on nights when no human could have reached the tower, when the path is overgrown and the stones slippery with moss. The dissonance between explanation and experience only deepens the mystery, leaving a lingering question in every listener's mind. If no one is there, who is ringing the bell? Some churches hold darker tales, stories of tragedy that seem to echo in the tolling itself. A centuries-old abbey, abandoned after plague wiped out its monks, is said to toll its bells on the nights when the mist lies thick over the river below. Witnesses report that the bell's tone carries an unmistakable sadness, a weight that makes their bones ache as they listen. There are tales of those who ventured closer, drawn by a morbid curiosity, only to find the abbey empty and cold, yet the sound persists. Those who return home speak of unease, as if the bell's song follows them, wrapping around their thoughts, refusing to be ignored. Across the world, the patterns repeat. In a remote part of Eastern Europe, villagers avoid the old stone church after sunset, claiming the bell rings for no reason at all. In Japan, a small wooden temple in the mountains reportedly tolls when an unseen monk walks its halls, invisible to the eye but heard clearly by those who pass nearby. Even in America, ghost stories speak of a chapel in the deep South where the bell tolls for lost souls long after its congregation has disappeared. Despite the differences in culture and architecture, there is a shared sense of unease. The sound is not natural. It does not belong to the living, yet it persists. Many who hear these phantom bells describe a sensation beyond fear. It is not just the sound, but the timing, the sudden intrusion into the stillness of the night that chills the soul. Some feel a warning in the ringing, as though the bell tolls for events yet to come, a herald of misfortune or death. Others experience something quieter but no less disturbing, the feeling of being observed, of invisible eyes watching them as the echoes linger. In old folklore, the tolling of a bell has always been significant, a marker of transition, of life to death, of the sacred and the profane. When the bell tolls alone, without a hand to ring it, it seems to carry that weight directly from the other side. There are those brave enough to investigate, walking the worn paths to abandoned churches armed with flashlights and recording devices, hoping to capture evidence of the unexplained. Some swear they have recorded tones that cannot be produced by any known instrument. Others describe feelings of being pushed, of shadows moving at the edge of vision, coinciding with the ringing. In some cases, the bells are heard by multiple witnesses at the same time, confirming that this is not a trick of the imagination. In these moments, the divide between legend and reality becomes almost imperceptible. The air feels thick, as if the unseen is pressing close, and the sound of the bell is the only bridge connecting the living to something beyond. Even in stories meant to caution rather than terrify, the bells carry a message. They remind the living that time does not erase memory, that loss does not quiet those who remain behind. Each toll is a story waiting to be heard, a fragment of a past that refuses to be forgotten. Some who live near these churches speak of the strange comfort the sound brings, a reminder that the world is larger than it appears, inhabited by forces that cannot be seen, but can be felt in the vibration of a single note. Others cannot bear the ringing, leaving town or barricading themselves indoors when the first echo drifts over the fields. In every account, the bell is both invitation and warning, a reminder that some echoes are meant to linger long after we have gone. Some abandoned churches seem almost alive in the way they carry sound. In a small town in Ireland, there is a stone chapel whose bell is said to toll on stormy nights, even though the clapper has long since been removed. Locals tell of hearing the bell's tone rolling across the hills, carrying a mournful rhythm that seems to echo the wind itself. One farmer, returning home late after tending sheep, swore that the sound grew louder as he approached the chapel, as though the building itself were breathing, waiting, watching him draw near. He claimed to have seen a faint shimmer of light near the belfry, as if the bell had a ghostly hand lifting it and letting it fall again, sending ripples of sound into the night. In England, there is a ruined abbey where the bell reportedly tolls at precisely 3 o'clock every morning. The abbey's bell tower collapsed centuries ago, leaving only jagged stones, yet witnesses describe the sound as rich and deep, carrying across the surrounding moors. Historians who examined the site suggested that natural acoustics might amplify distant noises, but those who lived nearby insist that the sound comes from nowhere at all. A couple who moved into a cottage half a mile from the ruins reported that the tolling would begin suddenly, often waking them from sleep. The sound had a weight to it, almost like a hand pressing down on their chests, leaving an ache that lingered long after the echoes faded. Across the Atlantic, in New England, there is a small white chapel tucked into a forested hill. Travelers report hearing a bell ring, though no bell tower exists. In some accounts, the bell tolls in response to people speaking near the chapel, as if the sound is aware of their presence. One visitor described walking up the gravel path and calling out a greeting, only for the bell to ring 3 times in reply. She later learned that the chapel had been abandoned for nearly 50 years. Locals claim that the bell tolls for the spirits of those buried in the adjacent graveyard, some of whom died tragically and never found peace. There are tales where the tolling bell seems to have its own intentions, not merely echoing the past, but influencing the present. In one village in Italy, an old church bell reportedly rings to mark events that are about to occur. Witnesses tell of a bell that tolled the night before a sudden landslide destroyed part of the hillside. Others report hearing the bell before unexpected deaths in the town. Some dismiss these stories as coincidence, but those who experience them speak with certainty and fear, convinced that the bell carries a message or a warning from another world. The idea that a simple sound could bridge the living and the dead is unsettling, yet endlessly compelling. Even the most skeptical cannot ignore accounts that are persistent, recurring, and frighteningly consistent. In France, a ruined monastery is said to have a bell that rings for a single moment every full moon. Witnesses describe hearing the same deep, resonant tone, no matter how many times they return. Some who attempted to record the sound found only static on their devices, as though the bell existed outside the realm of conventional physics. Locals call it le clocher fantôme, the phantom bell, and speak of it with a mixture of fear and reverence. The sound is said to leave a strange taste in the mouth, a metallic tang of memory and sorrow, a sensation that lingers long after the final toll. Among the most chilling accounts are those in which people claim the bell is not alone. In some ruined churches, the sound of footfalls, creaking doors, or distant chanting accompanies the tolling, as if unseen monks have returned to tend the building one last time. In one particularly eerie story from Eastern Europe, a man exploring an abandoned abbey at night reported hearing a bell tolling, followed by the echo of a choir singing a hymn. He searched the empty nave, stepping over fallen pews and shards of stained glass, but found nothing. When he returned home, he discovered muddy footprints on the floor of his bedroom, as if the echoes had followed him, leaving their mark in the living world. Some bell towers are said to toll for no one in particular, yet those who hear them feel as if the sound is directed at them personally. A woman in rural Scotland reported hearing the bell of a collapsed church every evening as she walked past the ruins. The sound was faint at first, but it seemed to grow louder the closer she approached. She described a sensation of being watched, a chill crawling along her spine. For weeks afterward, she avoided the path entirely, feeling the bell's echo lingering in her mind, a subtle warning that she could not ignore. In these moments, the phantom bell becomes more than a sound. It is a presence, tangible and deliberate, bridging the gap between the living and the unseen. Some of the most unsettling stories involve bells that ring with intention, as if aware of who is listening. In a village in Poland, there is an abandoned church perched at the edge of a forest, where the bell tolls only when someone has crossed a moral boundary, according to local legend. A hunter recalled walking near the church late one evening after poaching deer, an act strictly forbidden in the region. As he crept along the undergrowth, he heard the bell ring, low and mournful, vibrating through the trees. He froze, certain that someone or something was watching him. When he returned the following morning, he found the path littered with broken branches, though no footprints were visible. From that day on, he avoided the area entirely, telling neighbors that the bell's sound was not random, it was judgment. In parts of Japan, there are temples that have lost their congregations but continue to toll for the unseen. One temple deep in the mountains is said to ring whenever a traveler with impure intentions enters its grounds. Hikers and wanderers report hearing a sudden ringing, soft at first, growing in volume as they draw closer, only to find a bell without a tower or rope, swinging impossibly in the windless air. Some have claimed to see fleeting shadows around the bell, indistinct shapes that vanish when approached. Local monks who have visited the temple describe a heavy silence afterward, a feeling that the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for something unseen to act. Across continents, similar experiences are reported in abandoned churches in the Americas. In a ghost town in the American Southwest, a bell rings atop a small adobe church, despite the town being deserted for nearly a century. Some travelers describe the tolling as mournful, others as frantic, almost panicked. One researcher, documenting the town's haunted locations, recounted staying overnight in the main square. At exactly midnight, a resonant bell tolled 3 times. He ran to the church, but the building was nothing more than crumbling walls and sand-filled floors. The sound continued, echoing across the desert until it faded with the first hints of dawn. He later discovered that locals had long considered the bell a harbinger, its tolls signaling misfortune or death to those who hear it. Perhaps the most unnerving accounts involve those who hear more than just the bell. In an abandoned cathedral in Germany, witnesses have reported hearing the bell toll, followed by the faint strains of a choir. The voices are not loud, barely more than whispers, yet they carry a distinct harmony, a song that seems older than memory itself. Visitors who step inside the nave report a cold draft, the sense of eyes following them, and a heavy weight in the chest that grows with each toll. Some describe seeing faint shapes moving in the shadows, figures in robes that vanish when looked at directly. One elderly man who lived nearby for decades insists that the sound of the bell is a reminder of lives once lived and prayers never answered. He says that for those who listen, the echoes of the past are alive, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Even when explanations are offered, they rarely satisfy those who experience these phenomena firsthand. Scientists and acoustics experts may suggest that the sound is carried from distant churches or amplified by the architecture. But the precision, timing, and emotional weight of these tolls make such explanations seem hollow. Witnesses report hearing bells in locations where no other source could possibly exist, at hours when the world is silent and under conditions where sound should not travel at all. It is this impossibility that makes the stories compelling, terrifying, and unforgettable. In many cases, the sound of the bell evokes an emotional response more than fear alone. There is a sorrow to it, a longing that touches something deep within the listener. Some people weep, unable to explain why, while others feel a surge of dread, a visceral awareness that they are connected to something vast, unseen, and ancient. The tolling becomes a bridge between the living and the departed, a reminder that even in death, some presence refuses to fade entirely. These bells, whether warning, mourning, or simply echoing the past, leave an indelible mark on those who hear them. People speak of carrying the sound with them, of feeling it in quiet moments long after leaving the site. Some say it appears in dreams or in moments of sudden silence, a faint vibration at the edge of perception. For many, the phantom bells are not just sounds, they are experiences, a confrontation with the unknown that lingers and resonates far beyond the empty towers and abandoned steeples from which they emerge. Some of the most haunting accounts come from those who have attempted to record the bells. In a crumbling abbey in Spain, a team of paranormal investigators set up audio equipment to capture the mysterious tolling. For hours, nothing happened. Then, as midnight approached, A deep, resonant bell rang, though the abbey had no bell left. Or their microphones captured the sound clearly. Yet when they reviewed the footage, no movement, no vibration, no mechanism could be found. One investigator later confessed to hearing faint footsteps behind him during the recording, though the entire building was sealed and empty. In rural Italy, a small church abandoned after a cholera outbreak is said to toll its bell during sudden storms. Witnesses describe approaching the church and feeling an overwhelming presence, the air growing heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. One man who investigated the site reported a strange sensation, as though the bell itself was aware of his presence, responding to his movements, pausing and resuming at intervals that seemed almost deliberate. Some nights, he said, the sound would resonate differently, softer and melancholic, almost like a conversation from the past, as if the bell were trying to tell a story long forgotten by the living. Even in places where the bells do not physically exist, the sound seems capable of manipulating perception. In a Scottish village, locals speak of the midnight toll that drifts from the ruins of an old cathedral. People passing by claim to hear the deep, vibrating toll of a bell that was destroyed centuries ago. Children tell of waking to its sound, only to find empty rooms and silent streets. Adults describe an uncanny sensation of being pulled toward the ruins, drawn by the sound, yet terrified of what they might encounter. Psychologists may argue that the mind fills in gaps, that expectation and suggestion produce phantom sounds, but the precision and regularity reported by multiple witnesses defy simple explanation. Some bells appear to have personalities of their own. In one French village, an abandoned church bell is said to ring in response to acts of kindness or cruelty. Stories tell of villagers hearing the tolling after moments of compassion, but also after events of deceit or harm. The bell's rhythm, tone, and volume seem to reflect emotion, sometimes mournful, sometimes harsh. Those who have lived near it for years speak of a strange intimacy with the sound, feeling as though the bell observes the community and reacts to its moral balance. It is as though the bell is alive in a way that transcends wood, rope, or iron. History itself seems etched into these phantom tolls. In Germany, an old abbey that was abandoned after a plague is said to toll its bell in precise patterns as if recounting events long past. Some hear the rhythm and believe it mirrors the steps of monks walking the halls centuries ago. Others swear that the bell tells the story of the dead, a message carried across time and space, understood only by those who listen closely. One local historian claimed that the bell tolls at moments that correspond to significant dates in the abbey's tragic past, as if the building remembers and insists on being acknowledged. For those who live near these echoes, the experience is both terrifying and mesmerizing. Some report an addictive quality, a compulsion to hear the bell again despite the unease it brings. Others take measures to avoid it, altering routines to never be outside when it tolls, or closing windows and doors to shut out the sound. Yet the bell finds a way to reach them, whether through dreams, fleeting memories, or faint vibrations in the night air. It becomes not just a sound, but a presence, a force that commands attention and respect. And perhaps the most chilling truth is that these bells are never fully understood. They ring without cause, without a hand to pull the rope or strike the clapper. They toll for unknown reasons, at unknown times, in places long abandoned. Some say they warn of death, others that they mourn the forgotten, and still others that they carry messages from beyond. Whatever the explanation, the effect is universal. Anyone who hears these phantom bells feels the brush of something beyond, something ancient, unseen, and persistent. As night falls and the world grows silent, one can almost imagine standing in the ruins of a forgotten church, the cold wind carrying a single, clear toll across the landscape. The sound vibrates in the chest, lingers in the mind, and reminds the living that the past never truly dies. In the echoes of these forgotten churches, the boundary between the living and the dead feels thinner, fragile, and hauntingly close. The bell is more than stone and metal. It is memory, warning, presence, and story, resonating across time to reach those willing, or perhaps unwilling, to listen. There is a sound that unsettles in ways that words often fail to capture. A sound that drifts through empty corridors and abandoned buildings with an unsettling precision. Footsteps. Not the hurried pace of someone late. Not the shuffle of a careless visitor, but measured, deliberate, and impossible to explain. In old mansions, deserted schools, and abandoned hospitals, people have reported hearing these steps echo across wooden floors, stone hallways, and tiled corridors. Yet when they search for their source, nothing is there. The sound carries weight, intention, and timing, as if the very floor itself is aware of your presence and moving in response. One of the most notorious accounts comes from an abandoned school in the northeastern United States. The building had been shuttered for decades, its windows broken, classrooms stripped of furniture, and the gymnasium empty except for echoes. A caretaker who occasionally checked the property late at night described hearing footsteps in the hallways, first slow, almost hesitant, then picking up speed, pacing in a rhythm that mimicked the heartbeat. He followed the sounds from room to room, his flashlight trembling in his hand, yet the hallways were empty. When he returned the next night, the sounds returned, repeating the exact same rhythm, as though the building itself was performing a ghostly rehearsal of events long forgotten. In a deserted English manor, the echoes of footsteps have a reputation that frightens even the most skeptical visitors. People who enter the main hall late at night report hearing shoes on the stone floors, the sound moving from room to room as if tracing invisible paths. Some describe hearing stairs creak as though someone is climbing them, but when they reach the top, the landing is empty. Others speak of hearing a hallway filled with rapid footsteps, then a single, deliberate step stopping just behind them. When they turn, no one is there, yet the sensation of being observed lingers like a cold hand on the shoulder. The phenomenon is so well known locally that even casual tourists approach the manor with caution, aware that the building has a rhythm of its own, a cadence of the unseen. Footsteps in abandoned buildings are often accompanied by other, equally inexplicable sounds. Doors creak as though pushed by invisible hands, windows rattle without wind, and sometimes faint whispers or murmurs follow the rhythm of the steps. In one old hospital, nurses who volunteered to photograph the empty wards reported hearing patient footsteps in hallways that had not seen a living soul for years. The steps would stop abruptly when approached, only to resume moments later, a chilling game of hide-and-seek with the invisible. Even in broad daylight, when the building seemed utterly quiet, the faint echo of movement persisted, leaving those present with the unnerving impression that the walls themselves remembered those who once walked them. In parts of Eastern Europe, villagers speak of abandoned monasteries where footsteps can be heard pacing the cloisters at night. The stories are consistent. Measured, deliberate steps, sometimes accompanied by chanting, sometimes solitary and silent. Visitors who attempt to trace the sound often find themselves walking in circles, arriving back where they began despite following the footsteps exactly. Locals suggest that these are not spirits in the traditional sense, but residual echoes, impressions left on the very stones by monks long dead. Yet others insist that the footsteps are conscious, aware of intruders, and capable of interacting with the living. In these halls, the past does not merely linger. It acts, moves, and observes. Some buildings have a more sinister reputation. In a mansion in the southern United States, footsteps are reportedly heard following residents from room to room. One woman recounted that as she ascended the stairs to her bedroom, she could hear slow, deliberate steps behind her, matching her pace perfectly. She tried to rush, but the footsteps quickened in tandem, never overtaking her, never falling behind. When she reached the top, the hall was empty, yet the sound seemed to fade reluctantly, as though disappointed at having lost her trail. She moved out of the house shortly afterward, unable to bear the sensation of being tracked by something invisible, something patient and unyielding. The sounds of footsteps in abandoned places are often described as almost sentient. They respond to those who hear them, sometimes appearing to guide or mislead, sometimes pausing as if watching for a reaction. In a derelict hotel in Japan, explorers reported footsteps that mirrored their own movements exactly. One man paused mid-step, and the sound behind him stopped immediately. He continued, and the footsteps resumed. The effect was unnerving, a tangible interaction with something unseen that obeyed no known physical law. Locals call the hotel the moving building, claiming that the steps are not merely echoes, but ghosts, aware of the living and capable of subtle communication. Footsteps can also appear in places that are not traditionally haunted. In empty offices, factories, and storage facilities, night shift workers report hearing them echoing across hallways and stairwells. These sounds are distinct from the hum of machines or the creak of old floorboards. They have rhythm, weight, and sometimes even direction, as if the building is walking alongside them, mimicking their every move. Some have claimed to see shadows that correspond to the steps, fleeting figures glimpsed at the edge of vision, only to vanish when observed directly. The human mind struggles to reconcile the sound with reality, and in doing so, gives the footsteps a life of their own, a personality, and a purpose. Some of the most unsettling accounts involve footsteps that defy space itself, appearing in places where no one could logically walk. In an abandoned hospital in Germany, investigators reported hearing the slow shuffle of someone moving along a corridor, followed by a sharp, deliberate step, as if someone had stopped to observe them. When they followed the sound, it led them back to the same spot repeatedly, no matter which direction they turned. The effect was disorienting, a spatial puzzle that left the team questioning their own senses. They later reviewed recordings and heard the footsteps clearly, but the building's floors were empty and undisturbed. In an old textile factory in England, workers recount hearing footsteps echoing in the night shifts, even when the halls were devoid of life. The sounds were described as heavy boots on concrete, slow and deliberate, moving past doors and machinery with uncanny precision. One night, a security guard decided to track the steps. Each turn he took, the sound followed, sometimes speeding up, sometimes slowing, always mirroring his movement perfectly. When he called out, there was no response, only the echo of a step continuing somewhere just out of reach. Many who experience this phenomenon describe a profound sense of being watched, a lingering awareness of presence that cannot be seen or explained. Footsteps often carry with them a sense of history, a memory imprinted on the very walls of the building. In a Scottish castle abandoned for centuries, tourists have reported hearing the echo of armored soldiers pacing the great hall, boots striking the stone floors with rhythmic precision. Some have even described the footsteps changing pace depending on their own speed, as if the echoes were observing and reacting. Locals believe that these sounds are residual energy, a recording of past life that repeats endlessly. Others claim that the sounds are spirits of the castle's former occupants, still performing their duties in the afterlife, bound to the structure that witnessed their lives. Sometimes the footsteps seem to have purpose beyond mere repetition. In an abandoned mansion in France, visitors describe hearing footsteps that lead them to specific rooms or hallways. One man followed the sound up a flight of stairs, expecting to find someone or something, but instead encountered only a cold, empty corridor. He turned back, only to hear the footsteps return, advancing and retreating in a rhythm that seemed to mock him. Some believe that buildings themselves may possess a form of awareness, guiding or interacting with those who wander within, leaving an impression that is impossible to ignore. Footsteps can also appear at moments of intense emotion, heightening fear and anticipation. In a derelict theater in the United States, performers reported hearing a series of footsteps echoing across the stage during rehearsals, though no one was present. The steps seemed to accelerate when they paused, slow when they moved quickly, creating the impression of a conscious observer adjusting to their movements. The theater, long abandoned and structurally unsound, had no possibility of producing such consistent sounds naturally. Witnesses describe a palpable tension, a feeling that the building itself was aware, that it was responding not just to movement, but to intent and emotion. In some instances, footsteps have been reported alongside other auditory phenomena, amplifying the sense of the supernatural. In an old monastery in Italy, witnesses heard footsteps pacing the halls alongside faint chanting, the rhythm of movement in perfect harmony with the voices. The sounds would stop abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence, only to resume again minutes later. Some explorers reported feeling a cold presence, shadows brushing the edges of their vision, as if the echoes of movement carried the weight of the departed. The combination of footfalls and sound creates a layered experience, one that blurs the boundary between reality and memory, leaving those present unsure whether they are being watched or merely imagining it. Footsteps in the halls are not always malicious, yet they are never neutral. Even in quiet residential buildings, apartment complexes, or empty offices, people describe the sensation of being followed by invisible presences. The footsteps mimic, taunt, or observe, leaving a lingering unease. Some claim that the echoes are connected to unresolved events, unfinished business, or lingering grief, while others insist that the footsteps are deliberately aware, intelligent, capable of responding to human action. The consistency across cultures and locations is remarkable, as though some universal truth exists about the nature of these haunting sounds, a rhythm that transcends time, geography, and architecture. Some of the most unnerving experiences with footsteps occur when they appear in buildings that are not only abandoned but structurally impossible for someone to traverse. In an old Victorian mansion in the northern United States, explorers reported hearing a series of slow, deliberate footsteps on the upper floors while standing in the basement. The sound traveled with a clarity that seemed impossible, crossing floors and walls that had long since weakened and partially collapsed. When they ascended to investigate, the hallway was empty, yet the echoes continued, moving with a pattern that suggested awareness of their search. Many who experienced this claimed that the sound was not just an echo, it was deliberate, as if it were aware of their presence and choosing how to manifest. In a castle in Ireland, abandoned for centuries after a violent uprising, footsteps are said to follow visitors from room to room. Witnesses describe walking into a large hall only to hear someone pacing behind them. Yet when they turn, there is no one there. The steps sometimes quicken, as if the unseen observer is matching their pace, sometimes slow to match hesitation, creating a psychological effect that unnerves even the most skeptical. Locals suggest that these are the echoes of soldiers or servants long dead, endlessly retracing their steps, bound to the building by trauma, fear, or unfinished duty. Those who spend time near the castle report feeling watched long after leaving, convinced that the footsteps persist even when no one is around to hear them. In urban environments, abandoned factories and office buildings tell similar tales. Night shift workers often speak of hearing footsteps in empty corridors, stairwells, and atriums. The sound is distinct from machinery or natural building noises. It has rhythm, cadence, and sometimes directionality, as if the building itself is alive and interacting with its inhabitants. Some claim that when they walk through these halls, the steps mimic their own movements, almost like a shadow echo, perfectly timed and eerily precise. Others have glimpsed fleeting shapes at the edges of vision, shadows that match the rhythm of the steps, vanishing when looked at directly. The effect is disorienting, making one question perception, reality, and the limits of the unseen. Footsteps can also carry emotional weight, manifesting in places with a history of trauma or loss. In a long-abandoned orphanage in Eastern Europe, visitors report hearing children's footsteps, playful at times, hesitant at others, echoing down empty hallways. Some say the steps rush toward them, as if eager for attention, while others retreat and vanish just as quickly, leaving a profound sense of absence. Those who investigate report a cold, almost tangible presence, a heaviness in the air, and a lingering sadness that refuses to dissipate. It is as if the building itself mourns the lives that once filled it, and the footsteps are the memory of that grief made audible. There are accounts in which footsteps are accompanied by other phenomena, creating a symphony of the supernatural. In a deserted hotel in Japan, guests reported hearing footsteps pacing along hallways alongside the faint creak of doors opening and closing. Some heard whispering voices harmonizing with the steps, almost as if the sounds were choreographed. Visitors who followed the sound often found themselves retracing the same path repeatedly, caught in an invisible loop, unable to find the source. Locals call the hotel cursed, a place where the dead interact with the living through rhythm and sound, leaving behind a palpable sense of unease. Even seemingly ordinary places can harbor the echoes of unseen footsteps. In small apartment complexes, offices, or libraries, people have reported hearing steps when no one else is present. The sound can follow a person from room to room, pause when they pause, and accelerate when they walk faster. These occurrences blur the line between supernatural and psychological, yet the consistency of reports across different locations and cultures suggests something beyond simple imagination. There is a universality to the phenomenon, a shared experience that hints at forces unseen yet persistent, observing and interacting with the living in ways that challenge understanding. Some of the most disturbing accounts of footsteps involve moments when the sound seems almost sentient, reacting to the living in ways that defy logic. In a manor house in Germany, abandoned after a mysterious disappearance of the owners, visitors report footsteps that stop when approached but resume in a rhythm that mirrors their own heartbeat. One explorer described pausing mid-hall, only for the footsteps to echo his pause, then continue as he moved again. The sensation, he said, was suffocating, as if he were being observed by a presence capable of thought, tracking him, playing a game of invisible pursuit. In a ruined convent in Italy, footsteps have been reported echoing along corridors, once walked by nuns centuries ago. Witnesses describe hearing the measured pace of their steps, sometimes accompanied by faint whispers or rustling fabric, though no one is present. A local legend claims that these footsteps are the nuns' spirits, performing their daily rituals, trapped in the building by devotion or by the trauma of a plague that wiped out the convent's residents. People who explore the convent often leave shaken, recounting a weight in the air, a cold pressure that follows them through the halls, and the undeniable impression that the footsteps are aware of them, acknowledging their intrusion. In North America, abandoned hospitals and asylums are often cited for similar phenomena. Night shift staff and occasional urban explorers recount hearing footsteps echoing in deserted wards, stairwells, and treatment rooms. Some report the sound of dragging chains or the scuff of shoes on linoleum, paired with faint murmurs, laughter, or sobs. The most unsettling cases involve footsteps that mimic human behavior, pausing when a person pauses, quickening when someone moves faster, or retreating when approached. The effect is profoundly disorienting, forcing one to question whether the sound is a mere echo of the past or a deliberate presence testing their perception. Even in structures that are entirely devoid of historical tragedy, footsteps can manifest in inexplicable ways. Empty offices, abandoned theaters, and old storage facilities often become stages for the phenomena. Witnesses describe the sound as intentional, deliberate, and precise, leaving no doubt that something unseen is interacting with the physical world. The footsteps are not random. They move with purpose, pattern, and timing. Some say they feel observed, guided, or even judged by the invisible entity producing them. Psychologists may argue that human brains are wired to find patterns, yet the consistency and specificity of these reports across continents, centuries, and types of buildings suggest something more profound than imagination. In many stories, footsteps also carry memory. Old castles in Europe, deserted schools, and long-abandoned hospitals all seem to hold a residue of the lives that once moved through their halls. Visitors often speak of feeling a presence, as if each step leaves a trace, a whisper of life past. Children's laughter, the shuffle of elderly feet, the hurried pace of servants long gone. All of these can be heard echoing through empty spaces. For some, the footsteps are comforting, a reminder that life once existed there. For others, they are terrifying, proof that something lingers, watching, waiting, and perhaps even interacting with the living. There are places where footsteps are accompanied by other signs of life beyond the living. In an abandoned theater in Japan, footsteps on the stage coincide with faint whispers and the creaking of seats, forming a symphony of the unseen. Explorers report a disorienting experience, as if caught in a loop where every step they take is mirrored by something else, unseen, following their movement. The phenomenon creates a pervasive unease, a psychological tension that persists long after leaving the building. Many describe dreams haunted by the footsteps, waking in the night, hearing the same rhythm, replaying in their minds. Finally, some experiences suggest that footsteps can communicate. In a Scottish castle, a visitor reported pacing a hallway, only to hear footsteps approaching and receding in response to his own. Some locals interpret these patterns as messages, though their meaning remains elusive. Others see them as warnings, remnants of those who once walked the halls, repeating their routines for eternity. Whatever the explanation, the effect is unmistakable. The footsteps are not random noise. They carry purpose, history, and presence. They remind us that the spaces we occupy, even when abandoned, may not be empty, and that memory, grief, and unseen entities can linger in the very walls around us. In the echoes of these halls, the sound of footsteps becomes more than movement. It is memory, warning, presence, and story. Each step reminds us that the past never truly leaves. The buildings remember, and that some forces are patient, deliberate, and impossibly close. For anyone who has heard footsteps in the silent corridors of the abandoned, the experience is unforgettable, haunting the senses, shaping perception, and leaving an indelible impression of the unseen world that shares our own. There is a sound that goes beyond footsteps or bells, a sound that reaches into the very soul: music. Phantom music has been reported in churches, abandoned theaters, old mansions, and long deserted concert halls. It is music that plays when no one is present, notes drifting through empty rooms as if carried by unseen hands. The melodies can be gentle or jarring, sacred or sinister, but they all share a quality that makes listeners question reality itself. In many cases, the music seems deliberate, purposeful, a performance by an audience that no longer exists, and musicians who have long since departed. One of the most famous accounts comes from an abandoned cathedral in Italy. Travelers report hearing an organ, playing in the dead of night, deep and resonant, filling the vast stone halls. The sound appears to come from the altar itself, though the pipes have long since rotted and the instrument is destroyed. Witnesses describe the music as sorrowful, almost mourning, and say it evokes a sense of memory, as if the cathedral itself is recounting its history through melody. Some claim that when they enter the nave, the music shifts in tone, responding to their presence, intensifying or fading as they move. Those who experience it feel both awe and unease, as though they have intruded on something sacred and alive. In a small French village, a ruined abbey is said to host a phantom choir. Locals tell stories of hearing voices singing hymns on moonlit nights, notes weaving through crumbling walls and empty corridors. One visitor described standing near the ruins, the air thick and still, when the first faint note reached his ears. Within seconds, the voices multiplied, forming harmonies that seemed impossibly perfect, resonating across the open courtyard. Yet when he explored the building, he found no one inside, no hidden speaker or sound source. The voices lingered even as he left, fading slowly into the night, leaving a haunting impression that was impossible to shake. Phantom music is not limited to sacred spaces. In abandoned theaters across Europe and North America, explorers report hearing orchestras tuning, pianists playing scales, and faint applause echoing through empty auditoriums. In one old opera house, visitors claimed to hear a full performance unfolding as they stepped into the main hall. The instruments sounded rich, vivid, and hauntingly real, though the building had been deserted for decades. Some said the music followed them from room to room, moving from the stage to the balcony, as if invisible musicians were performing exclusively for them. The experience was described as mesmerizing and terrifying, a collision of beauty and the uncanny. Some accounts suggest that phantom music interacts with those who hear it, almost as if aware of the living presence. In a monastery in Spain, witnesses report hearing a choir singing in the early hours of the morning. The voices rise and fall in harmony, sometimes mirroring the movement of those walking through the cloisters. One explorer noted that when he slowed his pace, the singing softened. When he sped up, the tempo quickened. It was as though the music was conscious, listening, reacting, and communicating through melody. This phenomenon is repeated in various abandoned spaces across the world, leading some to believe that music is a conduit through which the dead interact with the living. In Japan, abandoned temples are said to host phantom, koto, and shamisen performances. Travelers report faint strings plucked in the still night, notes reverberating through corridors that have not seen worshippers for centuries. Some visitors describe the music as eerie yet calming, capable of drawing them deeper into the building. Those who enter report a mixture of fascination and fear, aware that the source of the sound is impossible to locate. It is as if the music exists outside conventional understanding, a soundscape that inhabits the boundaries between life and death, memory and reality. In the United States, abandoned churches in the southern states often feature reports of phantom organs and choirs. Witnesses recount hearing hymns sung in perfect harmony, accompanied by the rich, resonant tones of an organ that has long been destroyed or removed. Some claim that the music rises and falls according to the emotional state of the listener, growing louder and more urgent when they are afraid, softening when they attempt to leave. A few report hearing whispers beneath the melodies, phrases in languages long forgotten, adding a layer of mystery and dread to the experience. Phantom music is sometimes linked with tragedy. In a castle in Eastern Europe, a chamber orchestra reportedly plays every evening at the hour of a historical massacre, notes carrying a profound sorrow. Visitors say the sound is impossible to ignore, echoing through the halls and chambers, a remembrance of lives lost. Others have reported hearing wailing harmonies beneath the music, voices of those who perished, intertwined with melodies that seem both mournful and beautiful. The emotional impact is profound, leaving listeners with a sense of awe, fear, and a chilling awareness of history's weight. Some of the most unsettling reports of phantom music involve encounters where it seems to respond directly to those present. In an abandoned theater in Prague, explorers described hearing a full orchestra tuning before a performance. The notes began softly, almost imperceptibly, then grew in volume and clarity as if reacting to their proximity. When they paused in the hallway, the music paused. When they moved closer to the stage, the instruments seemed to swell in recognition. One violinist in the group claimed he could even feel the vibrations in his hands, as if invisible musicians were playing for him alone. The experience left them both mesmerized and terrified, a haunting reminder that music can exist without visible players, and that some sounds refuse to be explained. In a Scottish castle, phantom choirs have been reported singing in the grand hall where royalty once celebrated. Witnesses claim the voices echo with a clarity that no modern recording could replicate, carrying harmonics that seem to vibrate directly in the chest and stomach. Some describe the singing as devotional, others as mournful. Yet all agree that the choir has an awareness of those who enter the hall. The voices sometimes change in tempo and tone, matching the pace of movement or the emotional state of the listener. Visitors often leave with the sensation that they were part of a performance orchestrated by something unseen, an audience of the dead that has persisted for centuries. Even in modern urban settings, phantom music can emerge in unexpected ways. In abandoned factories, concert halls, and office buildings, employees or explorers report hearing instruments tuning or playing softly in empty rooms. One old piano in a deserted New York apartment building was said to play nightly, with keys moving as if pressed by invisible hands. Witnesses described melodies that were both beautiful and eerie, notes lingering unnaturally long, hanging in the air with a resonance that seemed to defy physics. Some claim that the music is accompanied by a sense of being observed, an awareness that intensifies the moment and leaves a lingering impression of the supernatural. In certain cultures, phantom music is linked to ritual and memory. In old monasteries in Japan, some temples are said to host koto and shakuhachi performances at specific times, long after monks have left. Travelers report hearing soft, deliberate plucking of strings or breathy flute notes drifting through empty corridors. The sound sometimes intensifies when they approach sacred altars, creating a sense that the music is not merely a sound, but a guide or a message from the past. Visitors often describe a mix of awe and fear, drawn deeper into the building, as though compelled by the melodies themselves. Some of the most eerie experiences involve voices rather than instruments. In a ruined abbey in France, visitors report hearing full choirs singing hymns in languages they do not understand. The voices are clear, harmonized, and emotionally expressive, conveying sorrow, joy, or urgency. Witnesses describe feeling as though the choir is aware of their presence, performing deliberately for them, sometimes pausing as they enter or leaving gaps in the melody that coincide with movement. One historian suggested that these sounds could be memory imprints, the echoes of countless prayers and ceremonies, but locals insist the phenomenon is conscious, a living performance by spirits who have lingered beyond death. Phantom music is sometimes tied to tragedy or violent events. In Eastern European castles and abbeys, musicians reportedly play pieces that reflect sorrow or loss, melodies that seem to mourn historical catastrophes. Visitors describe hearing strings, woodwinds, and vocals that evoke deep sadness, accompanied by an almost physical sensation of the building's grief. In some cases, the music is said to signal the approach of danger, a warning woven into the melody itself. Those who have heard it claim the experience is unforgettable, a chilling intersection of sound, history, and the supernatural. Even fleeting encounters with phantom music leave a lasting impact. Witnesses often describe waking hours later with fragments of melody echoing in their minds, notes they cannot place or explain. Some claim the music appears in dreams, intertwined with shadows or ghostly figures. Others feel a lingering presence, as if the invisible orchestra or choir continues to play just beyond the limits of perception. The power of the phenomenon lies not just in the sound itself, but in its ability to bridge the living and the dead, to evoke emotion, memory, and unease in a way that is both beautiful and terrifying. Some of the most unnerving experiences with phantom music occur in places where the sounds seem to defy time itself. In a centuries-old abbey in Germany, visitors report hearing Gregorian chants echoing through empty halls, the same melodies that monks once sang hundreds of years ago. Those who stand quietly claim the chants respond to movement, swelling in volume as if drawing attention, fading to silence when no one is near. One visitor described an almost physical sensation, a vibration in the chest, that felt like the voices were trying to communicate, a bridge across time connecting the living with the echoes of the past. In Italy, a ruined cathedral has long been infamous for its phantom organ. Travelers report the instrument playing complex pieces when the hall is otherwise silent. The notes are precise and deliberate, unlike the random creaks or echoes one might expect in an abandoned building. Witnesses describe the organ as alive, its music shifting with the emotion of those who enter. Some claim to hear whispers beneath the melodies, voices speaking in forgotten tongues, or singing harmonies that defy explanation. The combination of sound and presence leaves a lingering unease, a feeling that one is not simply listening, but participating in something ancient and unseen. Phantom choirs are reported not only in Europe, but across Asia and the Americas. In abandoned temples in Japan, travelers have heard soft chanting accompanied by the plucking of koto strings. The music seems to move through the building, following their steps and guiding them deeper into empty corridors. In South America, abandoned mission churches echo with the voices of choir boys and organists long gone. Witnesses report harmonies so precise and emotionally resonant that they evoke tears, fear, and awe simultaneously. These sounds are often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, fleeting shadows, or a feeling of being watched, intensifying the sense of the supernatural. Some phantom music is linked to specific events or emotional states. In a French convent, choir voices reportedly appear at midnight during storms. Locals claim that the music is more intense on nights when emotions run high, such as anniversaries of deaths or historical tragedies. Witnesses describe feeling compelled to follow the sound, drawn toward the source even when they fear what they might find. Some have reported that the music pauses when they attempt to leave, resuming only when they return, creating a haunting sense of presence and intentionality that cannot be easily explained. Phantom music is also known to interact with instruments that remain physically present. In abandoned theaters and concert halls, pianos, harps, and organs have been reported playing without human touch. Keys depress on their own, strings vibrate without plucking, and pedals move with no visible force. One musician who explored an abandoned opera house in Austria described sitting at a piano only to hear it playing in sync with phantom violins and cellos drifting from the balcony. The music seemed aware of his own actions, harmonizing or pausing as he played a single note. The sensation was unsettling, as though the unseen orchestra was both observing and collaborating. In certain locations, phantom music seems to be a marker of unfinished business or lingering souls. Castles and mansions where tragedies occurred often host musical phenomena that coincide with historic events. In Eastern Europe, for instance, some castles reportedly replay music performed the night of a massacre or betrayal, notes carrying grief, anger, and sorrow. Witnesses report hearing the music layered with footsteps, whispers, or the faint clatter of chairs, creating a multi-sensory experience that evokes the lives and deaths of those long gone. The effect is profoundly eerie, a reminder that sound can carry memory as powerfully as sight. Phantom music can also manipulate perception, creating an uncanny blend of reality and imagination. In abandoned churches, explorers sometimes hear melodies that only exist in fragments, looping endlessly or repeating in impossible rhythms. Choirs may sing in languages that no longer exist, or instruments play in tonalities that defy traditional music theory. Listeners often feel the music surrounding them, filling the air with presence, yet the source remains elusive. Some describe the effect as a haunting beauty, while others speak of dread, as though they have intruded on a performance not meant for the living. There are reports of music that seems to communicate, not just evoke emotion. In a Scottish castle, a visitor reported a series of chords that coincided with their own movements, as though the music were responding to their intent. In France, an abandoned abbey reportedly plays the same hymn every night, though the building has no power or organ. Locals say that the music carries messages from the past, guiding the living to remember events long buried, mourning those lost, or warning of danger. In every instance, the music is more than sound. It is memory, emotion, and presence, vibrating through space and time with a consciousness that both fascinates and terrifies. Some of the most haunting experiences with phantom music occur when it seems to transcend human perception, merging the past and present into a single eerie moment. In a centuries-old abbey in France, visitors report standing in silent hallways only to hear the faint hum of monks chanting. The voices rise and fall with no visible source, weaving a tapestry of sound that is simultaneously sorrowful and reverent. Some claim that the music shifts subtly depending on the listener's movement or attention, as if aware of the living presence intruding on a world meant only for the dead. Witnesses often describe the sensation as being enveloped in sound, unable to distinguish where the music ends and the building itself begins. In abandoned theaters across Europe, reports of phantom orchestras have persisted for decades. One notable account comes from an opera house in Austria, where visitors claim to hear violins, cellos, and brass instruments performing a symphony in the grand auditorium. The music was intricate, precise, and impossibly synchronized, yet no human being had been present for years. Witnesses often describe feeling compelled to sit in the front row, as though the unseen performers expect an audience, though the hall is empty. The melodies linger long after the visitors depart, sometimes replaying in dreams or echoing in the corners of the mind, leaving a chilling impression that is impossible to forget. Phantom choirs also appear in domestic settings, particularly in homes with historical significance or tragic pasts. In a manor in England, residents have reported hearing harmonized singing in the dead of night. The voices often appear to move from room to room, sometimes following them or responding to their actions. Some describe waking in the middle of the night to find the sound of soft hymns drifting through hallways, accompanied by faint footsteps or the rustle of fabric. The experience creates a sense of being observed by an audience that exists beyond the tangible, a ghostly performance both beautiful and unnerving. In Japan, travelers to abandoned temples often report hearing koto strings and shakuhachi flutes playing harmonies that seem to guide them through empty corridors. The music appears intentionally placed, drawing attention to specific rooms, altars, or hallways. Witnesses frequently describe feeling a blend of fear and fascination, compelled to move closer to the source despite knowing no one is there. In some cases, the music fades when they attempt to flee, only to resume once they pause or turn back. The effect is deeply psychological, suggesting that the music is aware, deliberate, and capable of interacting with the living. Phantom music is also reported in connection with tragedy and loss. In Eastern Europe, certain castles reportedly replay orchestral pieces performed on the night of violent events, such as massacres or executions. The music carries sorrow and grief, layered with whispers, footsteps, or faint cries. Visitors report an almost physical sensation of the building mourning its past, the melodies vibrating in resonance with the weight of history. In some instances, the music is accompanied by cold drafts, flickering lights, or shadows that move in rhythm, heightening the feeling of otherworldly presence. The phenomenon blurs the line between memory and reality, leaving a lasting impression that is difficult to shake. Some believe that phantom music functions as a bridge between worlds, connecting the living with those who have passed. In Italy, a ruined cathedral is said to host nightly organ performances, each note a message from the past. Witnesses report feeling emotions not their own, as if the music carries the experiences of the departed. Others describe voices singing in languages long forgotten, harmonies that defy explanation, and rhythms that seem to communicate rather than merely entertain. The experience is disorienting and mesmerizing, a reminder that sound can persist long after the physical presence of its creators has vanished. Even brief encounters with phantom music can leave profound effects. Visitors often recall melodies long after leaving, fragments echoing in their minds during quiet moments. Some claim that the music appears in dreams, blending with shadows or ghostly figures, while others report a lingering sense of being observed. It is this interplay of beauty, memory, and fear that makes phantom music uniquely unsettling. The melodies are not simply echoes. They are traces of life, grief, and presence that refuse to fade, haunting those who hear them with the weight of history and the mystery of the unseen. Phantom music and choirs are a reminder that sound carries memory, emotion, and perhaps consciousness. Each note is a story, each harmony a presence reaching across time. In churches, theaters, castles, and temples, the music persists, defying explanation, evoking awe and terror in equal measure. For anyone who has heard it, the experience is unforgettable, a chilling testament to the lingering power of those who once walked, sang, and played in worlds that no longer exist but refuse to be forgotten. Bells have always held a strange power over humans, resonating through stone towers, village squares, and church steeples with a sound that carries far beyond the physical. But some bells are different. They do not ring merely to mark time or call people to worship. Some toll when no one is near, their sound echoing across empty fields, deserted streets, or abandoned villages. These are the bells of warning and curse, ancient instruments said to carry messages from the unseen. Locals speak of them with fear, describing tones that foretell misfortune, death, or calamity. yet often remain unaware of their source. In a small town in Ireland, an old church bell has been ringing at odd hours for centuries. The tower is abandoned, the rope rotted, yet the bell tolls as if struck by invisible hands. Witnesses report that each toll coincides with a tragedy: a sudden death, a house burning, or a child disappearing. Those who hear it describe a sensation of dread, a weight pressing on their chest, as if the sound itself carries intent. One historian noted that the bell was forged during a period of plague, believed to have been imbued with the grief and anger of those who suffered. Whether warning or curse, the sound continues, echoing through the town like a spectral voice from the past. In Italy, a monastery houses a bell with a similar reputation. It rings at dawn, yet the tower has been empty for decades. Locals say that the tolling predicts events, both minor and catastrophic. Some villagers report hearing it only when alone, the sound impossibly clear, yet unable to locate its source. Others describe dreams filled with the tone, a low vibration that resonates through the body, leaving unease and anticipation that something is coming. The monks who once tended the bell believed it could communicate the will of higher powers, warning of danger or marking the crossing of souls. Today, the bell persists, a reminder that sound can carry intention beyond the grasp of the living. In France, a centuries-old church bell reportedly tolls only for those fated to die. Residents claim that hearing the bell outside its usual hours is a sign of impending misfortune. One woman recounted hearing it late at night while walking home, the deep, sonorous tone vibrating in the cold air. Days later, she learned of the sudden passing of a neighbor she had known for years. In many cases, the bell appears to select its audience, heard only by those it wishes to warn or curse, as though guided by an unseen hand. Theories vary. Some believe the bell is a vessel for spirits, others that it is a remnant of curses laid long ago, and some insist it simply resonates with the energies of human fear and mortality. Bells have also been linked to tragic events and accidents. In an abandoned village in Eastern Europe, a bell tower stands in ruins, yet the bell tolls at intervals, accompanied by faint cries and whispers. Travelers recount hearing the sound echoing across empty streets, growing louder as they approach, then fading when they retreat. Locals believe that the bell marks the deaths of those who enter the village, a warning left by spirits unable to rest. Witnesses often report an oppressive feeling, a cold weight settling on their shoulders, and a sense that the bell's sound is not just heard but felt, vibrating through bones and nerves alike. In some cases, bells are linked to curses or dark rituals. In England, an ancient church houses a bell said to have been consecrated during a period of witch hunts. Those who hear its toll report nightmares, misfortune, or unexplained accidents. The sound is deep, almost guttural, and seems to linger long after it has stopped ringing. Some describe feeling an invisible presence nearby, observing or guiding events in response to the toll. Researchers who have attempted to record the sound note strange anomalies. The bell sometimes emits tones that exceed natural resonance, or recordings reveal layers of sound imperceptible to the human ear at first. It is as though the bell carries a complexity beyond its physical structure, a memory or intention embedded in its metal. Globally, bells hold a history of both reverence and fear. In Japan, temple bells toll during festivals and rituals, yet some abandoned temples report phantom tolls at midnight. Visitors describe the sound as deliberate, almost conversational, carrying warning or guidance. In North America, old churches and universities with bell towers tell similar stories, mysterious ringing in the dead of night, often preceding accidents or ominous events. Witnesses consistently describe a sense of timing and awareness, the bell tolling in response to events or presence rather than at random intervals. Bells that warn or curse are not merely instruments, they are voices. They carry memory, intention, and presence, resonating across time with a power that surpasses explanation. Each toll can bring dread, forewarning, or the echo of historical trauma, a reminder that some sounds are not bound by the living world. The deep, resonant vibrations seem to imprint themselves on those who hear them, creating a lasting impression that cannot be shaken. Whether messenger or curse, the bell continues to toll, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, past and present, warning and fate. Some of the most unsettling accounts of cursed bells occur when their sound appears to follow individuals rather than simply echoing through a building or tower. In a village in Scotland, an abandoned church bell is said to toll whenever someone is near death or about to experience misfortune. Witnesses report hearing the low, sonorous sound while walking past the church at night, even when the tower itself is empty and the rope long decayed. Some describe feeling a weight in the air, a tension that tightens with each toll, leaving an almost physical sensation of dread. Those who have experienced it often report nightmares, ill fortune, or a sense of being watched, as though the bell itself has chosen to mark them. In Italy, the bell of a ruined monastery has gained a reputation for predicting tragedies. Locals tell stories of travelers who hear the bell tolling at unusual hours, only to encounter accidents, sudden illnesses, or unexpected disasters shortly afterward. Some claim that the sound is selective, audible only to those whose fate it seeks to warn or curse. Witnesses often describe a feeling of compulsion, as if the tolls demand attention and acknowledgement, their resonance impossible to ignore. The sound is described as both beautiful and terrifying, an intricate vibration that seems to penetrate walls and bones alike, leaving an indelible impression on all who hear it. In France, legends surround a bell in a rural abbey, said to toll in the presence of approaching death. One villager recounted hearing the bell while walking through the deserted graveyard at dusk. Each toll seemed to coincide with a chilling gust of wind, the branches of nearby trees swaying in rhythm with the sound. Days later, she learned that a relative had died unexpectedly, and the bell's warning became a story passed down for generations. Others have reported hearing the bell toll in dreams, sometimes accompanied by distant cries or whispers that seem to speak directly to the listener. The phenomenon creates a connection between the physical and the supernatural, leaving those who hear it with a lingering unease. Bells are also tied to curses and dark rituals. In an Old English church, a bell is rumored to have been consecrated during a time of witch hunts. Accounts describe the bell ringing at unpredictable hours, often coinciding with accidents, illnesses, or sudden misfortune within the surrounding village. Witnesses report an oppressive atmosphere accompanying the toll, a sense that unseen eyes are observing their every move. The sound itself is described as guttural, resonant, and layered, sometimes producing harmonics that are impossible for a single bell to achieve. Some researchers suggest that the bell carries a residual energy, a memory of the fear and violence that imbued it centuries ago. Phantom bells have been reported in urban environments as well. Abandoned factories, old municipal buildings, and university campuses with bell towers often produce accounts of ringing that cannot be explained. In one historic university, students reported hearing the bell toll at midnight, echoing down deserted corridors. Some felt compelled to follow the sound, which seemed to respond to their approach, stopping and starting as if conscious of their movements. Others claim that the bell reacts to group presence, tolling when one is alone, but silent when multiple people are nearby, adding an unpredictable, almost sentient quality to its haunting. Globally, bells have long been associated with omens. In Japan, temple bells toll to mark events both joyous and sorrowful. Yet in abandoned temples, phantom tolls have been reported at night. Travelers describe the sound as deliberate, carrying a message or warning that seems tied to unseen forces. In North America, old churches in rural areas often feature similar phenomena, with bells ringing without apparent cause, accompanied by sudden drops in temperature or fleeting shadows. Witnesses frequently describe a heightened sense of awareness, feeling as though the tolls are directed at them personally, rather than merely echoing through space. Some bells are linked directly to history and tragedy. In Eastern Europe, bell towers of castles and abbeys echo with tolls corresponding to past events, battles, executions, and mass deaths. Witnesses report hearing the bells sound layered with faint whispers or distant cries, creating a haunting auditory tapestry that speaks to the lives lost within the stone walls. The tolling often evokes intense emotion, leaving those who hear it shaken and deeply aware of the building's past. In these instances, the bell becomes more than an instrument. It is a storyteller, a carrier of memory, grief, and warning. Bells that warn or curse are reminders that sound can carry intention and presence beyond the living world. Each toll resonates with history, emotion, and the supernatural, linking the present to events long past. For those who hear them, the experience is unforgettable. A physical vibration, a psychological weight, and a chilling sense that the unseen is reaching across time and space. Whether heralding misfortune, marking fate, or carrying a lingering curse, the bell's sound persists, a haunting voice that refuses to be ignored. In some cases, the power of cursed or warning bells is tied directly to the people who hear them. In a village in Germany, a church bell is said to toll for those who are about to face misfortune or even death. Witnesses describe hearing the bell while walking alone at night, the sound deep and resonant, vibrating through their bones. Some who heard the toll reported feeling an urgent compulsion to return home or seek safety, while others ignored it, later discovering that a neighbor had met a sudden tragedy. Locals tell stories of the bell choosing its audience deliberately, marking individuals as if aware of their fate. The sound is more than auditory. It is an experience that touches both mind and body, a subtle yet undeniable force of warning or judgment. In Italy, a ruined monastery hosts a bell that tolls seemingly at random. Travelers and urban explorers report hearing it echoing through empty cloisters, sometimes pausing and resuming as if testing their attention. Some who venture near claim that the bell responds to their presence, growing louder as they approach and fading when they move away. Witnesses often describe an eerie stillness in the surrounding air, a sense that the tolls are observed by unseen eyes. The legend suggests that the bell carries the intent of the spirits who once inhabited the monastery, a voice that speaks across time to warn or curse those who intrude. Phantom bells can also be tied to tragedies that occurred centuries ago. In Eastern Europe, castle towers and abbeys echo with tolls that correspond to historic massacres, sieges, or executions. Visitors report hearing the bell accompanied by faint cries, whispers, or even the subtle movement of unseen presences. The sound is unnerving, not merely because it exists without explanation, but because it seems to convey the weight of past suffering. Those who have experienced it often feel strange connection to the events, as though the tolling carries memory, grief, and warning all at once. Some scholars suggest these bells may serve as auditory remnants of trauma, echoes imprinted on the very structure of the tower. Bells are not only linked to tragedy, but sometimes to curses, In England, an ancient bell is said to have been consecrated during witch hunts, carrying the residual energy of fear, vengeance, and grief. Witnesses report hearing the bell toll at unusual hours, often coinciding with personal misfortune or accidents. The sound itself is described as powerful and multi-layered, sometimes producing frequencies that seem to vibrate in the chest and skull, leaving an almost physical impression. Some villagers believe the bell is capable of influencing fate, a sentient instrument that interacts with those who hear it. Attempts to silence or remove the bell have failed, as it continues to ring despite human intervention, reinforcing the idea that its power is beyond mortal control. Even in urban areas, phantom bells make their presence known. Abandoned universities, municipal buildings, and factory towers with bells often feature reports of tolling that cannot be explained. In one historic university in the United States, students reported hearing a bell toll at midnight, echoing across deserted courtyards. The sound seemed aware of their movements, pausing when they stopped and resuming when they continued, creating a disorienting sense that the bell was tracking them. Others describe a sensation of pressure or cold accompanying the sound, an invisible weight that intensifies the eerie atmosphere. These experiences reinforce the idea that bells carry awareness, intention, and possibly sentience beyond what the living can perceive. Globally, phantom bells have been linked to both superstition and superstition's darker side. In Japan, temple bells toll at midnight in abandoned sites, often coinciding with ill omens or unexplained events. Travelers describe the sound as deliberate, as though the bell is delivering a message or warning. In South America, old mission churches echo with tolls long after their congregations have vanished. Witnesses report that the bell seems to select who hears it, ringing for some while remaining silent for others. The selective nature of these sounds adds a deeply personal layer to the experience, reinforcing the sense that the bell carries purpose and perhaps even judgment. Bells that warn or curse are unique in their combination of sound, history, and supernatural implication. Each toll resonates with a presence, a memory, or a message that transcends ordinary understanding. Witnesses consistently describe an emotional impact far beyond what a simple sound should evoke, from dread and fear to awe and reverence. The deep, sonorous vibrations penetrate both space and body, creating a lingering impression of connection with the unseen. In churches, towers, and temples worldwide, the ringing continues, a bridge between past and present, warning and fate, visible and invisible. Some of the most eerie accounts of cursed or warning bells involve personal encounters where the tolling seems directed at a single individual. In a village in Germany, a traveler reported walking past an abandoned church at night when the bell rang unexpectedly. The sound was deep and resonant, vibrating through the air and seemingly through his very body. It continued intermittently as he walked, never coming from a predictable location. The traveler later learned that a close relative had suffered a sudden accident that same evening. Locals explained that the bell has long been associated with forewarnings, striking only for those whose lives are about to change or end, a spectral messenger that transcends logic and time. In Italy, a bell in a ruined monastery has inspired countless tales. Visitors often hear it tolling in deserted cloisters, its deep sound rising and fading with an almost sentient rhythm. Some claim the bell responds to their presence, increasing in volume as they approach and softening as they retreat. Witnesses report a heavy, oppressive atmosphere accompanying the tolls, a weight pressing on the chest and mind that leaves them with a lingering sense of dread. The legend suggests the bell carries the intent of long-departed spirits, a voice reaching across centuries to deliver warnings, curses, or perhaps judgment. In France, stories tell of a rural abbey where the bell tolls selectively. Some hear it and associate its sound with impending tragedy, while others report hearing nothing at all. One man described hearing the bell as he walked past the empty churchyard, the toll resonating across the village. Days later, he learned that a neighbor had died unexpectedly. In such accounts, the bell appears purposeful, as though it chooses who will hear it and when. It is both warning and curse, its resonance intertwined with fate, leaving those who hear it acutely aware of the thin line between life and death. Phantom bells have also been linked to curses, rituals, and historical violence. In England, one ancient bell was consecrated during the height of the witch hunts, its metal believed to be imbued with fear, anger, and unresolved energy. Witnesses recount hearing the bell toll at unusual hours, often preceding misfortune or accidents. Some describe a sensation of being watched, or an almost physical reaction to the deep vibrations, a tremor that travels through bones and nerves. Efforts to silence the bell or remove it have failed. It continues to ring, its toll a persistent reminder that some forces cannot be controlled or extinguished by human hands. Even in modern urban environments, phantom bells maintain their unsettling presence. Abandoned factories, old university bell towers, and municipal buildings have produced countless reports of unexplained tolling. In one historic American university, students heard a bell toll at midnight, echoing across empty courtyards. The tolling seemed aware of their movements, pausing when they stopped and resuming as they moved, a deliberate, sentient interaction. Others describe sudden chills, feelings of oppression, or a sense that unseen eyes are observing, enhancing the surreal and terrifying experience. Globally, phantom bells have a history steeped in superstition, legend, and tragedy. In Japan, temple bells toll at midnight in abandoned temples, often coinciding with misfortune or supernatural events. Travelers describe the sound as purposeful, a warning or message carried through time. In South America, mission churches long abandoned echo with tolls that seem to follow specific individuals. Witnesses note that the bell appears to select its listeners, a phenomenon that reinforces the sense of intelligence and intent behind the sound. The selective nature of these tolls creates a deeply personal and unnerving experience, as though fate itself is being communicated through vibrations. Bells that warn or curse embody the intersection of sound, history, and supernatural presence. Each toll resonates with memory, intention, or warning, connecting the listener to events long past or fate yet to unfold. Those who hear them describe profound emotional impact, from terror to awe, a physical and psychological impression that refuses to fade. The deep resonance seems to penetrate not only space but the human body, leaving a lingering sense of connection to the unseen. Across centuries and continents, from church towers to abandoned temples, these bells persist, ringing through time as messengers of fate, carriers of curses, and keepers of warnings that bridge the mortal and supernatural worlds. The tolling of a bell is never just sound, it is presence, it is message, it is history echoing in stone and air. Those who have experienced it know the weight it carries, the anticipation, the dread, and the chilling sense that the bell does not merely ring, but chooses its moment, its audience, and perhaps even its victims. In this way, the cursed or warning bell becomes more than an object. It is an active participant in the unfolding story of human fear, tragedy, and the unknown. A voice that persists long after those who forged it have vanished. Some of the most unsettling hauntings are not about what is seen, but what is heard. And the presence of an unseen audience amplifies that unease. In old theaters, abandoned halls, and forgotten auditoriums, visitors often describe the sensation that they are being observed by countless invisible eyes. Footsteps echo across wooden floors when no one is present. Chairs creak as though occupied, and soft murmurs ripple through empty rooms. It is the feeling of an audience, silent yet attentive, reacting to every movement, every breath, every heartbeat. In a theater in Prague, explorers reported stepping onto the stage of an abandoned opera house, only to feel an almost physical pressure from the empty rows of seats. A faint rustling of movement and low whispers filled the air, as if a crowd of unseen spectators was analyzing their every step. One of the explorers claimed to hear soft applause in the distance, only to realize that no one could possibly be there. The experience left them both terrified and fascinated, an unnerving reminder that some places retain not just memory, but the essence of those who once occupied them. Historical accounts suggest that these unseen audiences are not random, but tied to the history of the space itself. In a castle in Scotland, a banquet hall is said to be haunted by the spirits of past lords and ladies. Visitors report hearing the clinking of glasses, the scraping of silverware, and low conversation, as if a feast were ongoing. The sounds are precise, synchronized, and sometimes appear to respond to the movements of the living. Guests who step into the hall describe a feeling of anticipation, as if their actions are being judged or observed, a reminder that the echoes of the past are not always passive. They interact, respond, and persist. In some cases, the unseen audience appears in domestic settings. In an old English manor, residents reported hearing furniture shift and footsteps pacing along the corridors, yet no one was there. The sounds often correlate with particular events, such as family gatherings or the presence of strangers, creating the impression that the house itself is attentive, perhaps even protective. Some claim the noises intensify when they are alone, as though the invisible watchers are ensuring that every action is witnessed. The psychological impact is profound, blending the fear of the unknown with the eerie notion that one is never truly alone. In Japan, temples and abandoned theaters frequently host similar phenomena. Travelers report entering empty spaces only to hear distant laughter, murmured conversations, and the creak of floors under invisible feet. The sounds appear directed, as though the audience is aware of the visitor's presence, responding to movement, pauses, or even hesitation. Some describe faint whispers guiding them, beckoning towards certain rooms or altars, creating a deeply unnerving sense that the unseen spectators are not passive echoes, but conscious participants in a ritual or performance. Some unseen audiences are tied to tragedy or violent history. In a European castle, explorers reported the sound of armor clanking, footsteps pacing along battlements, and low murmurs resembling strategy discussions. These auditory experiences coincide with the site's history of sieges, betrayals, and executions. Witnesses often describe a sense of living history, an overwhelming awareness that the spirits of those who once existed are still present, replaying moments from their lives and deaths. The audience is unseen but intensely present, a silent observer of the living who enters their world. In urban settings, abandoned theaters, schools, and public halls often hold the same unsettling presence. One high school in the United States, long closed, reportedly echoes with the sound of students moving through halls, lockers slamming, and voices calling names that have not been used in decades. Paranormal investigators note that the sounds often mimic human patterns and reactions, creating the illusion of a living crowd. Visitors feel scrutinized, the eerie sense that the invisible audience is watching, judging, and perhaps even communicating through the subtle manipulation of sound. The unseen audience can also create auditory illusions that are impossible to explain. In an opera house in Austria, explorers described hearing applause in precise rhythm to performances that had not occurred in decades. Some even reported hearing sighs of disappointment or murmured comments on their movements, as though the long-dead patrons were evaluating their presence. These interactions leave a lingering unease, the feeling that one's actions are part of a performance, staged for invisible spectators who exist beyond the boundaries of time, space, and mortality. Across cultures and continents, the phenomenon of an unseen audience raises profound questions about memory, consciousness, and the persistence of human presence. These sounds are more than echoes. They are fragments of life, emotion, and attention preserved within the walls and floors of spaces that once teemed with activity. Visitors often leave with the chilling impression that they were not alone, and that the audience remains silently observing, waiting, and existing in a dimension parallel to their own. Many accounts suggest that the unseen audience is not limited to empty buildings, but can appear wherever history has left its mark. In a French opera house abandoned after a devastating fire, explorers reported hearing the gentle rustle of costumes, the soft tap of shoes across the stage, and whispers of dialogue that had not been spoken in decades. The sounds often followed them as they moved, creating an unsettling sensation that the audience was both present and attentive, aware of every step. Some described the voices seeming to comment on their actions, a faint mixture of approval and critique, leaving them unnerved and intensely aware of being watched by entities that existed beyond human understanding. In Scotland, a centuries-old banquet hall is said to replay feasts long past. Visitors report hearing laughter, clinking goblets, and the hushed tones of conversations frozen in time. The sounds often begin subtly, growing louder as the visitor explores the space, as if the invisible guests are drawing attention to themselves. Some explorers have claimed that the auditory phenomena respond to emotion. The more anxious or curious the visitor, the more vivid and active the sounds become. It is as though the unseen audience is not merely echoing history, but actively participating in it, interacting with the living in a way that defies conventional explanation. In Japan, abandoned temples and theaters are known to host similar phenomena. Travelers often report entering quiet spaces only to be greeted by distant laughter, footsteps, and soft murmurs. Some claim that the sounds seem to respond to their actions, pausing when they stop, resuming when they move, or shifting direction as if guiding them. These auditory cues are often accompanied by a sensation of presence, a feeling of being watched and followed by a multitude of invisible observers. The psychological effect is profound, leaving visitors both captivated and terrified, unsure whether they are intruding or participating in a ritual unseen by the living. Unseen audiences are sometimes tied to intense historical events or tragedies. In European castles and fortresses, explorers report hearing the clank of armor, whispers of strategy, and murmurs of dissent that correspond with past battles. These sounds often occur in specific locations, suggesting that certain spots act as anchors for auditory memories. Witnesses describe a feeling of being part of a replayed moment in history, a silent observer of the lives and conflicts of those long deceased. The experience can be overwhelming, blending awe with fear, as if the walls themselves remember and communicate the lives that once inhabited them. In urban settings, the phenomenon persists in abandoned schools, theaters, and public halls. In one American high school left vacant for decades, students reported hearing the echoes of footsteps, lockers slamming, and voices calling names long forgotten. Investigators noted that the sounds appeared to follow patterns consistent with human behavior, as if the invisible audience were moving through the halls in coordination. Visitors often describe the feeling of being scrutinized, their every action observed and responded to by entities that exist in a parallel dimension. The effect is disorienting, blurring the line between memory, perception, and the supernatural. The unseen audience can also evoke profound emotional responses. In Austria, explorers visiting an old opera house reported hearing applause that perfectly matched performances that had not occurred in decades. Some even claimed to hear sighs of disappointment or faint commentary on their movements, creating the sensation that they were participating in a performance evaluated by long-dead spectators. This intimate interaction with the unseen audience intensifies the sense of intrusion, as if the spirits retained agency, memory, and awareness, turning a simple exploration to a chilling encounter with the past. Globally, these phenomena demonstrate that sound can preserve presence in ways that transcend time and mortality. The creaks, whispers, footsteps, and applause are more than echoes. They are imprints of attention, memory, and observation, lingering long after the living have departed. For those who encounter the unseen audience, the experience leaves a lasting mark, a subtle yet undeniable awareness that one is never entirely alone, that the past continues to watch, respond, and exist alongside the present. Some of the most unnerving encounters with unseen audiences occur in places of great personal or communal significance. In an old French theater, visitors reported entering the grand auditorium to find it empty, yet they could hear the faint rustling of dresses, the tap of shoes across the stage, and quiet murmurs that seemed directed at them. The sounds shifted with their movement, pausing when they stopped and resuming as they walked, creating the overwhelming sense of being observed by countless invisible eyes. Witnesses described a mix of awe and terror, an acute awareness that the past audience remained active, waiting, and attentive to every detail of their presence. In England, an abandoned manor often echoes with the sounds of gatherings long forgotten. Footsteps pace the hallways, chairs creak as if occupied, and whispers fill the air with words that are never quite intelligible. Residents and explorers alike have recounted sensations of being watched, of invisible figures following their movements, and even of feeling subtle guidance, as if the spirits are leading them toward specific rooms or artifacts. These auditory experiences blend with the psychological, creating a disorienting environment where the line between the living and the spectral is almost imperceptible. Castles and fortresses in Europe offer some of the most vivid examples. In Germany, a medieval fortress is said to host an unseen audience composed of soldiers, nobles, and servants from centuries past. Visitors report hearing armor clanging, murmurs of strategy, and the low murmur of conversations that seem to replay events frozen in time. These sounds often coincide with particular locations within the fortress, suggesting that certain rooms act as anchors for auditory memories. Witnesses describe a profound emotional impact, a mix of reverence and fear, as if stepping into a space where history itself continues to breathe and observe. Unseen audiences are not confined to Europe. In Japan, abandoned temples and theaters frequently echo with footsteps, laughter, and whispered conversations. Travelers report feeling a presence, a multitude of invisible observers reacting to their movements. Some claim that the auditory phenomena guide them, pausing and resuming in rhythm with their actions, creating an almost ritualistic experience. The effect is deeply unsettling, making one aware that these spaces retain more than memory. They retain awareness, attentiveness, and perhaps even judgment. In North America, old schools, theaters, and public halls hold similar hauntings. In one deserted school, students reported hearing lockers slam, footsteps pace corridors, and voices call names long unused. Investigators observed that the sounds often mirrored human behavior, reinforcing the impression of a living audience composed entirely of invisible figures. Witnesses frequently describe the sensation of being under scrutiny, their every action silently judged by unseen spectators who exist in a parallel dimension, blending memory, perception, and the supernatural. The presence of an unseen audience is often accompanied by physical sensations. Explorers report chills, sudden shifts in temperature, and a feeling of pressure, as though the air itself is aware of their intrusion. In theaters, castles, and manors, the combination of auditory and physical phenomena creates an immersive experience where the past seems alive, watching and interacting with the present. It is this interplay that leaves a lasting impression, a reminder that spaces once filled with human activity may never truly be empty. Globally, the phenomenon demonstrates that sound can preserve presence in ways that transcend time. Footsteps, whispers, applause, and murmurs are more than echoes. They are imprints of attention, emotion, and observation. They linger in halls, theaters, temples, and castles, maintaining a connection between the living and the unseen. Those who encounter these audiences are often left with a haunting awareness that they are never truly alone. The unseen audience serves as a chilling reminder of the persistence of human presence beyond mortality. Every whisper, every rustle, every tap of a foot or creak of a chair carries the weight of lives once lived, moments once shared, and a tension that refuses to fade. To walk into such a space is to step into the gaze of history itself, to become both participant and observer in a story written long before your arrival. These audiences are not passive. They are attentive, reactive, and enduring, existing in a dimension parallel to our own. To hear them is to feel the invisible eyes of the past, silently watching, waiting, and reminding us that some histories can never truly be left behind.